Okay, good morning, Year 9. So last week, a couple people in their feedback said it would be really useful to have a look at some models so that they could understand exactly how an analytical paragraph should be structured, what it should have in it, and so they can kind of use it as an example. So I've chosen two model examples from the submissions last week, and I'm briefly going to talk you through what they've done well, what you can learn from them, but also a little bit of feedback for how they could be even better. So this is the first example. It's by Fatima. She answered the question, how is the character of Mr. Whitney presented? If you remember, Mr. Isa Whitney is the character at the beginning of the story of the man with the twisted lip, whose wife comes looking for him, who has gone missing for multiple days, and who turns up in the opium den with no idea what day of the week it is, no idea where he is. And then his character kind of disappears, gets put into a carriage, and we don't actually see him again. But for me, he's a really interesting symbol because I think to myself, well, why did Doyle choose to include this character? He clearly was a vehicle to allow Watson to get to the opium den, so kind of within the narrative it makes sense. But I feel like it's more than that. I feel like Mr. Whitney's character is an interesting representation of another gentleman with a secret, and that's a thread that we've seen across all the stories and something that I want to talk about before your assessment and something I want you to be thinking about. So both Fatima and Anastasia have answered this question about Mr. Whitney, and they've both identified some really interesting things. So let's take a look at his character. Um, Fatima says, in this extract, Doyle chooses to present Isa's character as oblivious and unstable. Doyle emphasizes the fact that the intake of drugs has completely made a gentleman like Mr. Whitney unaware of his surroundings, and himself when he writes, I thought it was Wednesday. It is Wednesday. He sank his face into his arms and began a sob in a high treble key. Whitney seems lost and weak because he is unaware of the fact that he has been thrown inside the opium den for 2 days, and it is Friday, not Wednesday. As well as this, he is also shown to be weak because he sobs in a high treble key, which in the Victorian era is thought to be not something masculine or gentlemanlike. Doyle's obvious use of the word thought shows a feeling or an idea, which again emphasizes the oblivious character of Isa as he is not certain. A reader may consider feeling pity or sympathy for the character of Isa by seeing his ill state. Um, so really enjoyed reading Fatima's response, and she wrote a really nice couple of developed paragraphs. The reason why I've chosen this one, the first reason, it's going to come up here, is because I think that what she's done is really show me a clear impression of the character. So you see the words that I've highlighted in red here. These are Fatima's very clear personal impressions. I know from reading this that she really understands the character. She's got an interpretation, and it's one that she follows through all the way through the paragraph. So you can see here I've said she's got a clear, purposeful idea and she's linked it across and justified it, linked to evidence throughout. So she starts by saying he's oblivious and stable. Oblivious is like you're kind of unaware. And then she then refers to being unaware, lost, weak, unaware, weak, gentleman, oblivious. So can you see there's that real thread across her answer? She's not kind of chucking in loads of ideas. She's really clearly fixing on one idea and she's developing it. And that's really difficult to do. So really well done to Fatima. Um, you can also see that she's introduced her quotation and then she has referred back to it. So she refers back to the word thought, and she also refers, which I haven't put in green actually, to the phrase high treble key. So she does unpack her evidence and she continuously links that back to her main idea, which is great. Now, the thing that I think Fatima could push a little bit further is she could think about the evidence that she's choosing a little bit more carefully, I think this quotation is interesting, but I don't know whether she picks out the words and the ideas that she can really expand on. I don't know if it allows for that exploratory analysis. So we can notice that there aren't any methods explicitly identified. She says the word, ideally that would be verb choice. Um, but I think there's not that much that you can say about the word thought, right? It doesn't, you can't really go anywhere with it. And although she picks out the high treble key, I don't think that that in itself is really fully explored. So I think that choice of evidence is really important. And that's why I encourage you as you're reading to be taking notes of interesting quotations, because actually, one of the big things for an essay is if you don't choose interesting enough evidence, you don't then have anything to say. So I would say in the next couple of lessons, something I'd really push you to do is make sure that your evidence is interesting enough, that it's good enough, that it's got interesting devices and methods, and that you are kind of really got something sort of meaty to unpack. And the other thing I think Fatima could do is link to the big why. So she's told me Doyle's presentation of the character, she's given me the evidence, she's linked it all together, which is lovely, but she doesn't link that to context here or Doyle's big intention. So why does he want um, to present Isa in this way? So we know this Victorian character because she refers to the gentlemanly idea, so she's aware of context. I know she is, but she doesn't link that to what Doyle thought of this context. What's his feelings about gentlemen at this time? What is he trying to tell us about them? Um, so that's fascinating. Some really good things to learn from and a little area for development.